How's it going, everyone? Today we are talking lenses, most specifically the lenses and the focal lengths that I choose to carry around with me every single time I go out to take photos with my camera. I have been through many lenses in my photography journey with different camera brands, and this is by far the happiest I've been in a lens setup, more specifically a focal length setup. And I would say that for now and definitely the foreseeable future, these are the only 3 lenses that I need. There are a lot of mistakes that can be made with lenses. There are a lot of unfortunate purchases that can be made as well. And I want to see if I can help you guys avoid that and avoid learning the hard way like I did. So if you're a beginner and you're new to lenses and you're a little bit overwhelmed by the amount and the volume of choices that there are out there, don't overcomplicate yourself with the specs and which lens is better than the other lens and all that kind of stuff. I think the first thing you really need to focus on are 2 things. You want to focus on what kind of focal lengths you think you're going to enjoy shooting with, or what focal lengths you already do enjoy shooting with, and whether you prefer prime lenses or zoom lenses. Now, if you don't know the difference between a prime and a prime is a lens like this. It's basically a lens that only sticks to one focal length. So this is a 17mm lens, which is a 34mm full frame equivalent. I'm in the micro four thirds system, so probably just write down, if I say something that's in micro four thirds, I'll write down on the screen what it is full frame. And a zoom lens is a lens like this over here, which you guessed it, can zoom from one focal length to the other. Both lens systems have their advantages and their disadvantages. The advantage with a prime lens is, generally speaking, prime lenses do tend to have a little bit higher quality. It's not necessarily a night and day difference, but I have noticed a slight advantage in glass quality and just in picture quality with a prime lens versus a zoom lens. But the most important aspect of a prime for me specifically is the fact that prime lenses tend to be faster. Now, a fast lens basically means a lens that can open up to a lower, or is it a higher? I'm gonna say lower because the number's lower, a lower aperture, which basically means it lets more light into the sensor with the lens itself. Since I work with a micro four thirds sensor, the sensor is a little bit smaller than what you would get on a full frame sensor, and therefore lets a little bit less light in. So for me, having prime lenses basically means I get to maximize how much light goes into the sensor. Therefore, I get cleaner, better images. So as I mentioned before, this is a 17mm micro four thirds, which is a 34mm full frame. Now, 35mm, or the range between, I'd say 30 to 40mm, that's my favorite focal length. That's the focal length that I ideally would like to shoot at, 95% of the time. It's where I get my favorite images. I really enjoy the wider but not too wide sort of framing. So anywhere between 30 and 40 works great for me. So having a prime lens that sits at 34mm works perfectly for me. This is the lens that I say I would use, I would say a good 85% of the time on my camera. These two then fill that gap pretty much evenly from there. But this is the lens that, if I had to super glue a lens to my camera, it would without a doubt be this one. I really like this lens specifically. This is actually an Olympus lens, and I use a Lumix camera. But I really like this lens specifically because it's very well built, but it feels not well built. It's weird. It's strong, it's sturdy. I've dropped this thing many times, and there's barely a scratch on it. It's very well built, but it's so light as a feather. And it just feels good. The ring, the focus ring, which I've had issues with on certain micro four thirds lenses, that the focus ring can be a little bit annoying and doesn't work as well. This thing is smooth as butter. You can also manually switch it between autofocus and manual focus. And so when you bring the ring down over here, now you are in manual focus, and that will automatically do that with you on the camera. And I really like that. If I'm ever in a pinch and the autofocus is just messing me around, I just want to be, ready with my camera, select manual and just go ahead and manual focus it and not worry about doing that on the camera dial. I like when lenses give you that option. But the main reason why I love this lens is got nothing to do with the lens itself. It's to do with the focal length. Like I said before, 30 to 40 is my favorite. So sitting at 35 or 34 is perfectly fine for me. And I think one thing that we need to start thinking about, or you should start thinking about when it comes to selecting your lens, is don't look for, or don't think about it as, all right, well, what lens do I need that can help me get the job done? It should be, what lens can help me get the job that I want done? And those are two very different questions, because photography at its core is an art form, and art form needs personality, it needs an identity, it needs your spin on it, it needs your twist on it. And framing and composition is one of the most important and useful weapons we have as photographers to be able to capture that. And lenses are our best friends when it comes to that. Forget camera, lenses are our best friends when it comes to pretty much everything, when it comes to our images and our quality and what we like out of our photos. And identifying that early will allow you to start taking photos that you love more. It will allow you to start developing more of a style and an enjoyment within the focal range that you love to shoot in. And it will basically allow you to start getting a much better and more aesthetic body of work much earlier on in your photography career and journey. So with that in mind, this being my primary lens and the focal length that I really enjoy shooting in most, this is my second lens. Now this is a lens that I use a lot for my video stuff. So typically I'll shoot my talking head stuff on this lens. This is just gray. It has a very, very sharp output, even for it being so wide. This is a 9mm, so it's 18mm full frame equivalent. And I've taken some really nice photos with this. It's really sharp, it's really clean, and I very often will start by wanting to go a little bit wider if I can't get things within the 30 to 40 mil range before I go longer. So this is where I wanted a lens that was wide. I wanted to get something that could cover as much bases as I can in case I'm in a place where, you know, I'm in either an interior setting or a setting where it's a little bit cramped in, so I need a wider lens to be able to, you know, make the scene look a little bit bigger. It's very good for professional use if I'm doing real estate or anything like that. It's just a very good, you know, strong wide lens that always deserves to stay in the backpack. It's not the lens that I use the most because I'm not necessarily a big wide angle photography kind of guy, but again, you know, start with this and then move on to these two if I can't get the shot. And now moving on to this one. So this is my only zoom lens. This is a 45 to 200. Now, full disclosure, I am gonna be upgrading this very soon to a 45 to 150 that I found for a relatively affordable price. And the only reason I'm doing that is just because this thing is very beat up. The autofocus doesn't work very well. There's a lot of, you know, finger, and I think there's some dust inside the lens. I've had this lens for a long time, and it's just been through a lot of stuff. And this lens is really interesting because even though it's definitely the flattest out of all these lenses, it's nowhere near the sharpest. The autofocus doesn't even work. It doesn't even work on 24 FPS if I'm shooting video. But I have taken some really good video footage with this, and I have taken some really excellent photos with this as well. And it's just one of those lenses that just really does make you realize that you can get so far even with non-expensive lenses. And that is just really cool to see with a lens like this. I love the fact that you can buy, you know, affordable lenses that might not be perfect, and they'll definitely have some drawbacks, but they will allow you to find a style, and they'll allow you to rule out certain things that you don't enjoy. Same with this lens, all right? This lens did cost me a little bit more, and I bought this after I moved on from Canon and I switched to the Micro Four Thirds ecosystem, and I knew that I wanted the 35, and I just kind of bought the Olympus just for fun. I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to test something out. I wanted to see how it worked, and it worked out great. You know, it wasn't particularly cheap, but it wasn't exactly, you know, ultra expensive either. I think it's very well priced for the lens that it is, and this lens basically told me, all right, 35, I'm always gonna want a 35 prime in my kit, even if I change all my camera equipment and I go to a different system and whatnot, I am always gonna want a 35 mil prime, and 9 times out of 10, is probably gonna be my favorite lens in that kit. But like I said, this is definitely the cheapest out of all three lenses, but it's also a lens that I've taken some work that I'm genuinely very happy with. So that's the focal range that I'm working with, and I don't see this changing anytime soon. Now, you might be wondering, there is a pretty big gap between this lens and this lens from a focal range perspective. Obviously, 18mm to 35, fair, but you know, it's not that big of a gap. This is a much bigger gap, right? Between 35mm all the way to 45mm, which, what is that in full frame? I think that's like, what, 80, 85, you know, maybe, I don't know, something around those lines. So that's a lot of nothing here, right? So what do I do when I need something within this range? Well, to be perfectly honest with you, a lot of the times, nothing. A lot of the times I really do get by with either this focal length or this focal length, and I don't often need something here in the middle. And don't forget, just because you have a prime lens doesn't mean that you're just stuck with this in terms of that's all you can get. It's all you can get in terms of focal length, but you can move closer and further behind, sideways, backwards, top down. There's a lot of, things that you can do just for movement and getting yourself closer to your subject with a lens like this. So that's why I went ahead and got this, because if I can't get closer to the subject, it generally means that either it's like, an animal that I don't want to get too close to, or there's like a lake that's in my way, or there's just an obstacle that's not letting me move forward further, generally meaning I'm going to need something that can get me a lot closer than whatever anything here can provide me. Now, I do have a filler lens, which is why I call it a filler lens. It's not the technical term, but it's this lens over here. This is a 30 millimeter prime lens, 2.8. The only reason I bought this is not because of this, all right? This gap here, that wasn't bothering me. The only reason I bought this is for two reasons. One is I do sometimes do photography professionally, so I like to be able to, have that range. So that is another thing to think about. But on top of that is the fact that this is not only a 30 millimeter well, I just revealed it. This is not only a 30 millimeter, but it's also a macro lens. Macro means that you can get very, very close to your subject and get very detailed shots that you simply can't get with any lens that's not a macro, unless if you have like an attachment or something. The only reason why I didn't include it with these three bad boys is because I don't take it with me everywhere. It's not the lens that would really help me in that many scenarios. If I can't get something with this, generally speaking, I can't get it with this either. And that's where experience comes in. That's where you start noticing what you're using, what you're not using, and are you coming home with photos or are you not coming home with photos? And that's sort of, the most important part of this whole thing, right? If you're coming home with no photos as a beginner, intermediate, whatever, even advanced, if you're not coming home with photos and you've ruled yourself out, right? That's the first thing you need to rule out. Rule yourself out first. Are you doing the right things? Are you making the right choices? Are you giving up way too quickly? Are you keeping your camera in your backpack so you're missing all the shots? Like, are you doing everything you need to be doing when you're out in the field to maximize your potential of getting photos? If you've ruled that out, so that it's entirely not your fault, it is 100% the equipment's fault, which a lot of times it isn't, but sometimes it's true that the equipment can get in your way. The second thing you need to look at is your lens. You want to rule out about 5 or 6 different possibilities before you even start looking at the camera being the problem, okay? It's generally speaking, it's you, or me, it's the person, it's not enough work getting done on the field and not enough trial and not enough testing and not enough composition ideas and creativity on site. That's typically the number one issue, but the number two issue, generally speaking, is the focal length is not serving your photography needs and what you want to be photographing. And then that makes it very easy to figure out what you need. So for example, let's say you don't have any of these two, a 45 to 200 as your first lens, and you discovered that you don't really like that kind of close-up photography. You always need to go way further back and you're running out of space. There's a lake, there's a mountain, there's a car, there's a house. There's always something and you're just never getting anything you want with this lens. Then that's going to make it so much easier for you to then say, okay, well, you know what? I think I need something a little bit wider. So I'm going to try and go for maybe a 12 to 60, like a zoom lens. There's a lot of cases where zoom lenses can make a lot of sense for these kind of scenarios. You don't have to do what I'm doing and get primes, but get yourself a wider focal length because you're realizing that on site, you're not getting the photos you want because this is just too close. It's not wide enough. Those are always the lessons, and that is the best way to tell you what kind of photography you enjoy and what kind of focal lengths you need for that kind of thing. And once you have what you need, you then realize that you don't need that much else, right? And yes, lenses like this are important. They're filler lenses. Full transparency, these are all the lenses I own. Okay, well, except for the kit lens that came with my GF1, which is somewhere as a 20 mil, but that only lives on my GS1 unless if I need it for a video like this. But so 5 lenses, I guess in total, but these are the 4 lenses. This is the only one that I'm not including in the everyday carry. And it's one of the reasons why I chose to be in the Micro Four Thirds ecosystem, because this is a very small kit with my camera and I can still throw a drone in my backpack and my laptop and it's all good. This is why I chose to be in Micro Four Thirds. The camera system is a whole nother conversation. I made a video about my GH7 on my channel. You're welcome to go check that out if you'd like to know more about that. But this is one of the reasons why I chose to be in the Micro Four Thirds ecosystem, is so I can have a range like this and it barely break a dent in my camera bag. That's just awesome to me. And I love the fact that there are tools like this available with this kit. And I've had kits that I've had way more than this, way heavier, way more expensive than this. And I sold all of it to downgrade and to go, well, not downgrade, to upgrade to a smaller system and to smaller lenses and less lenses. And I'm taking more photos than ever. I'm happier with my kit. And now the decision paralysis is pretty much gone. Instead of thinking to myself, okay, well, I want to go and take some photos, open up my camera bag, what lenses am I gonna bring today? I can't fit all this in my bag, and it's heavy and all that kind of stuff. It's like, what do I wanna shoot? Now it's, all right, cool, I wanna go to this location and shoot, pack the bag, ready up the car, let's go. Simple as that. Sometimes less really is more with photography, and a huge part, and one of the most fun parts of photography is the trial. It's all right, how am I gonna tackle this, and how am I gonna find my style? And find focal lengths that you just really enjoy shooting with, because that will make the process for the rest of it feel so much easier, and it just makes sense. I feel like this is a setup, including this one, this is just a setup that makes sense. There's nothing illogical about this. It wasn't overly expensive, fairly affordable, and to me, this is perfect. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Hopefully we'll be outside shooting some really cool photos with all this really cool stuff. I'll see you guys there.